You ever notice how the people who clean up after us just kinda disappear? Like they're right there, wiping down counters, emptying trash, rest-tacking chairs, but we don't really see them. They're background noise, human furniture. And honestly, most of us are cool with that. It's easier that way. Less awkward, less human. But here's the thing, and I'm not even kidding when I say this. Sometimes the person you're ignoring is the only one in the room actually paying attention. And dude, that's when things get wild. So picture this, Beverly Hills. Not the touristy part with the palm trees and the Instagram spots. I'm talking the real Beverly Hills. The kind of place where the driveways are longer than your street. Where the security gates have security gates. Where even the air feels expensive, like you're breathing in someone's net worth just standing there. Inside one of these mansions, and I mean mansion like 8 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, a wine cellar that could double as a panic room, there's this woman. Mid-50s. Quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you forget she's even there. She's wearing those blue latex gloves, the ones that squeak when you move your fingers. Her cart's stacked with cleaning supplies. Windex, microfiber towels, that lemon-scented stuff rich people love because it smells like effort without the actual effort. She's been working this house for years. Every Tuesday and Friday. Same routine. Same hallways. Same marble floors that echo every footstep like you're walking through a cathedral. And every time she's here, there's this stillness. Like the house itself is holding its breath. The owner? He's always around but never really there, you know? He's on calls. Meetings. Deals. His voice carries through the whole place. Sharp, calculated, the kind of tone that makes people on the other end of the phone say yes before they even hear the question. He's the type who doesn't look at you when he talks. Doesn't have to. Power like that? It just radiates. And her? She's just moving, dusting, polishing, existing in the margins. But here's where it gets kinda creepy. You ever been in a room with someone who thinks you're not listening? Like really thinks you're just furniture? People say wild stuff. Stuff they'd never say if they thought you mattered. Secrets. Threats. The kind of things that make your skin crawl if you're actually paying attention. And she is. Oh man, she is. Because while he's pacing back and forth, phone pressed to his ear, talking about offshore accounts and shell companies and names that sound like they belong in a crime documentary, she's right there. 10 feet away. Wiping down a countertop that's already clean. Moving slow. Methodical. Invisible. But not deaf. And that's the part nobody thinks about. The part that makes you wonder, how much do the people we ignore actually know? How much do they see? How much are they just filing away? You ever passed by someone like that and thought, what if they're the one person who could ruin everything? Probably not, right? Because why would you? They're nobody. They don't count. Except, what if they do? What if the woman with the squeaky gloves and the lemon-scented spray bottle just heard something she wasn't supposed to hear? What if she's standing there, scrubbing grout while her brain is doing the math? While she's realizing that what she just overheard, the names, the numbers, the implications, could flip someone's entire world upside down. And here's the kicker. Nobody even knows she knows. Not yet. So stick with me here because what happens next is the kind of thing that makes you rethink every interaction you've ever had with someone you thought didn't matter. The kind of thing that proves invisibility? It's not always a weakness. Sometimes it's the ultimate advantage. And real quick, if this story's already got you hooked, hit that like button. Seriously, it helps more than you think. Every like pushes this kind of storytelling to people who need to hear it. People who forget that the folks they ignore, they're human too. And if you're into stories that expose what power tries to hide, that find empathy in the most unexpected places, subscribe. Because we're just getting started. And trust me, you're gonna want to see where this goes. Now here's where things start to shift. Because power? It's not always loud. Sometimes it's the quietest thing in the room. And in this house, silence is currency. The man, let's call him what he is, untouchable, moves through his own space like he owns the molecules in the air. Which honestly he probably does. He's got that walk. You know the one. Where every step sounds like a signature on a contract. Where eye contact is optional because attention is already assumed. He doesn't need to demand respect. He's just there. Built into the architecture. And her? She's the opposite of architecture. She's wallpaper. Background static. The kind of presence that only gets noticed when something's out of place. A streak on the glass, a crooked frame, a forgotten towel. But as long as everything's perfect, she might as well be a ghost. Except ghosts don't have ears. It starts small. A name dropped on a call. Then another. Then a location. Then an amount, the kind of number that makes your brain stutter because it doesn't even sound real. And he's saying it all out loud. Not whispering. Not encoded. Just talking. Because why would he care? Who's listening? The woman with the Windex? Please. But here's the thing about being underestimated, it gives you time. Time to think. Time to process. Time to decide what kind of person you're going to be when the moment comes. And she's had a lot of time. See people like her? They see patterns. They notice things. Not because they're trying to, but because they're there. Every week. Same rooms. Same routines. Same conversations happening like she doesn't exist. And over time, you start to piece things together. A name mentioned twice. A phone call that ends abruptly when someone walks in. A locked door that's usually open. A visitor who never stays long but always leaves with an envelope. It's like watching a puzzle build itself in slow motion. Except nobody thinks you're smart enough to see the picture. And that assumption? That's the crack in the armor. Now, I'm not saying she went looking for trouble. She didn't. She's just trying to pay rent, take care of her kid, maybe save enough to finally fix that car that's been coughing since 2019. She's not some undercover hero. She's not trying to expose corruption or take down the system. She's just surviving, doing her job, staying in her lane. But survival gets complicated when your lane suddenly has landmines in it. Because one day, one completely normal, unremarkable Tuesday, he's on another call. Same tone, same pacing, same assumption that nobody's paying attention. And he says something specific, something that makes her hand freeze mid-wipe. Something that connects all those little puzzle pieces she didn't even realize she'd been collecting. And in that moment she knows. Not suspects. Knows. And knowing? That's a whole different weight. You ever had that moment where you realize you're holding information you absolutely should not have? Where your brain is screaming, pretend you didn't hear that, but it's too late because you did hear it and now it's just sitting there, taking up space in your head, demanding a decision? That's where she is. And the wild part? He has no idea. He finishes his call, adjusts his cufflinks, walks past her like she's a lamp, doesn't even glance her way. Why would he? She's nobody. She doesn't matter. She's not a threat. Except now she is. Not because she wants to be, but because she knows. And knowing changes everything. Now here's where the psychology gets interesting. Because most people think moral dilemmas are about choosing between right and wrong. But that's not how it works in real life. In real life, it's about choosing between two versions of wrong. Between staying silent and staying safe, or speaking up and risking everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Her job, her safety, her kids' safety. Because people like him, they don't just fire you when you become inconvenient. They erase you. And she knows that. She's seen what happens to people who get in the way. Not directly, but enough. Enough to know that invisibility isn't just her job description, it's her armor. So what does she do? That's the question that keeps her up at night. That sits in her chest while she scrubs floors and folds towels and pretends everything's normal. Because the truth is, doing nothing is a choice. And doing something is a choice. And both of them come with consequences she can't afford. But here's the twist nobody sees coming. She doesn't panic. She doesn't run. She doesn't make some big dramatic move that tips him off. Because she's smarter than that. She's been underestimated her whole life, and she knows how to use it. Instead, she does something most people wouldn't have the discipline to do. She waits. She keeps showing up. Keeps cleaning. Keeps being invisible. But now she's watching. And the difference between those two things, existing and watching, is the difference between surviving and planning. Because she realizes something most people never figure out. Information is only powerful if you know when to use it. Drop it too early? It gets buried. Too late? It's worthless. But right on time? Right when the pressure's highest and the stakes are clearest and the world is finally paying attention. That's when invisibility becomes influence. And she's patient. So patient. Because patience is the only currency she's got. Meanwhile, he keeps living his life like nothing's changed. Because to him, nothing has. He's still untouchable. Still powerful. Still operating in a world where people like her don't even register as human. And that confidence? That absolute certainty that he's safe? That's his biggest mistake. Because while he's been ignoring her, she's been learning him. His patterns. His tells. His weak spots. Not in some spy movie way, just in the way you learn anyone you're around long enough. When he's stressed. When he's distracted. When he's vulnerable. And she's starting to realize that vulnerability isn't loud. It's not a moment of breakdown or confession. It's just a crack. A tiny opening. A split second where the mask slips and the real person shows through. And she's seen that crack. Now I want to go even deeper into this because here's what most people miss about power dynamics. They're not fixed. They're fluid. They shift based on who knows what, who needs what, and who's willing to risk what. And in this house, in this moment, the balance is starting to tip. Not because she's suddenly brave. Not because she's suddenly strong. But because she's finally seeing the game for what it is. And she's realizing that the only reason she's been losing is because she thought she wasn't allowed to play. But here's the thing about people who've been counted out their whole lives. Once they stop counting themselves out, they become dangerous. Not in a violent way. In a strategic way. In a way that makes the people who underestimated them realize, way too late, that they should have been paying attention all along. And he still has no idea. He's still taking calls. Still dropping names. Still treating her like furniture. And every time he does, she files it away. Another piece. Another connection. Another thread she can pull when the time is right. Because the time is coming. She can feel it. Something's building. Some external pressure she doesn't fully understand yet but can sense in the way his voice gets sharper on calls. The way visitors come and go at weird hours. The way he locks doors that used to stay open. Something's about to break. And when it does, she's gonna be ready. Comment below, I see you, if you're realizing where this is going. Now I want to go even deeper into this because what happens next isn't what you'd expect. It's not some big confrontation. It's not a dramatic showdown where she walks up to him and says what she knows. Real power shifts don't work like that. They happen in the margins. In the pauses. In the moments where someone who's been silent finally decides to stop pretending they don't see what's right in front of them. So here's what changes. Nothing. And everything. On the surface, the routine stays the same. She shows up on Tuesday. She shows up on Friday. She wipes down the same counters, vacuums the same floors, straightens the same throw pillows that nobody actually uses. But underneath, there's this shift. This quiet recalibration of who holds what cards. And the wildest part is he still doesn't notice. Because he's too busy assuming he's the only one playing the game. But she's not just playing anymore. She's studying. And here's where the psychology gets real. When you've been invisible for long enough, you develop this superpower most people never get. You learn to read rooms. Not just physically, emotionally. You pick up on tension, on fear, on desperation. Because when people don't see you, they don't perform for you. They just exist, raw, unfiltered. And that gives you access to the truth in a way that powerful people almost never get. So she starts noticing things she didn't before. Or maybe she always noticed, but now she's paying attention differently. The way his jaw tightens when certain names come up. The way he paces faster during specific calls. The way he looks over his shoulder even when nobody's there. He's stressed. No, he's scared. And fear? That's a crack you can work with. Because here's the thing about people at the top. They're terrified of falling. More terrified than people at the bottom are of staying there. Because when you've got everything to lose, the stakes aren't theoretical. They're existential. And she's starting to see that the man who seemed untouchable? He's actually just really, really good at pretending. And pretending only works when everyone believes the performance. Now, around this time, something external starts happening. She doesn't know all the details, she's still just the cleaning lady, still operating on fragments and overheard conversations. But she can feel the pressure building. There are more visitors now. More late-night meetings. More hushed conversations that stop the second she enters a room. Whatever he's involved in, it's reaching some kind of tipping point. And the energy in the house reflects it. It's heavier, sharper. Like the air before a storm. And she realizes something crucial. Timing isn't just about when you act. It's about when the world is ready to listen. Because she could have said something weeks ago, months ago even, but who would have cared? Who would have believed her? The cleaning lady accusing a powerful man of something she overheard while scrubbing his countertops? Please. She would have been dismissed, discredited, maybe even destroyed. And nothing would have changed. But now there's attention. Now there's scrutiny. Now the walls are closing in from other directions and all she has to do is wait. Wait for the exact moment when her voice, the voice nobody thought mattered, suddenly becomes the one everyone needs to hear. And that moment is coming. She can feel it. But here's where it gets complicated. Because even though she knows what she heard, even though she understands the weight of it, there's still this voice in her head asking, is it worth it? Is it worth risking everything, her safety, her income, her kid's stability, to do the right thing? Especially when the right thing doesn't come with guarantees. When it doesn't promise protection or reward or even acknowledgement. This is the part nobody talks about when they romanticize whistleblowers and truth tellers. They forget that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act despite it. And that decision is brutal. It's lonely. It's the kind of thing that keeps you up at night running through every possible outcome, every worst-case scenario, every version of your life that ends badly because you chose to speak. And she's running through all of it. But here's what tips the scale for her. It's not some grand moral epiphany. It's not a moment of clarity where suddenly everything makes sense and she knows exactly what to do. It's simpler than that, and way more human. She thinks about her kid. Not in some abstract, I'm doing this for the next generation way, but in a very real, very specific way. She thinks about the world her kid is growing up in. A world where people like him get away with everything because people like her stay silent. A world where power protects power and the rest of us just accept it. And she realizes that if she doesn't do something, if she chooses safety over truth, she's teaching her kid the same lesson she's been taught her whole life, that some people matter and some people don't. And she's done with that lesson. So she makes a decision. Not impulsively, not emotionally, but with the kind of cold, clear-eyed certainty that only comes after you've weighed every option and realized there's only one you can live with. She's going to speak, but not yet. Not until the moment is right. Not until the world is listening. Now here's where it gets even more interesting because the psychology of power is built on perception. As long as he believes he's untouchable, he acts like it. He gets sloppy. He makes mistakes. He says things out loud that he should be whispering. And the more secure he feels, the more vulnerable he actually becomes. And she's counting on that. Because the plan, and yes, she's got a plan now, isn't to confront him directly. That would be suicide. The plan is to let the pressure do the work. To let the external forces that are already closing in do what they're gonna do. And then, at the exact right moment, when everyone's looking for answers and nobody knows where to find them, she'll provide the missing piece. Not as a hero. Not as a savior. Just as someone who was there. Someone who saw. Someone who finally decided that being invisible doesn't mean being silent. But here's the thing that makes this whole situation so tense. He's starting to sense something. Not consciously. He couldn't tell you what it is. But there's this shift. This subtle change in the air. Maybe it's the way she moves through the house now, a little slower, a little more deliberate. Maybe it's the way she doesn't flinch anymore when he raises his voice on calls. Maybe it's just instinct. That primal part of the brain that knows when someone's watching you differently. Whatever it is, he feels it. And one day, one completely unremarkable Friday afternoon, he does something he's never done before. He looks at her. Not past her. Not through her. At her. And for just a second, their eyes meet. And in that second, there's this flicker. This barely perceptible shift in his expression. Like he's suddenly seeing her as a person instead of a function. And it's not friendly. It's not warm. It's assessing. Calculating. Like he's trying to figure out if she's a problem he needs to deal with. And she holds his gaze. Just for a beat. Just long enough to let him know she's not afraid. Then she goes back to cleaning. And he goes back to his call. And the moment passes. But something fundamental just changed. Because now he knows that she knows that he's watching. And she knows that he knows that she's not as invisible as he thought. And that knowledge, that mutual awareness, that's when things get dangerous. Because invisibility was her protection. And now it's gone. And whatever happens next, it's gonna be a test of who's been underestimating who this whole time. Comment below, I felt invisible once, if you've ever been through something similar. I want to hear your story. And stick with me because what happens from here on out? Everything changes. Now here's where everything starts to unravel, but not in the way you'd think. Because the thing about power is, it's not actually solid. It's more like a house of cards. Looks impressive from the outside, but one wrong move and the whole thing collapses. And right now, in this mansion with its marble floors and its million-dollar views, the cards are starting to shake. She notices it first in the small things. The way his schedule changes. Meetings that used to happen in his office now happen behind closed doors in rooms she's not allowed to clean that day. Visitors who arrive without names, who park in the back, who leave through side exits. And his phone. It never stops. Even at 2 in the morning, she can hear it buzzing from downstairs when she's coming in early for a last-minute cleaning request. But here's what really tells her something's wrong. He's drinking more. Not in a sloppy way. He's too controlled for that. But she notices the bottles. The way the whiskey in the crystal decanter drops faster than it used to. The way he pours at 10 in the morning now instead of waiting until evening. The way his hand shakes just slightly when he lifts the glass, like his body's betraying what his face refuses to show. Fear manifests in the body before the mind admits it's there. And his body is screaming. And she's watching all of it. filing it away. Because every crack in his armor is another confirmation that what she knows matters. That the information sitting in her head isn't just gossip or speculation, it's leverage. It's truth. And truth, when wielded at the right moment, is the most powerful weapon there is. But here's where the moral complexity comes in, and this is important. Because it would be easy to paint this as a simple story. Powerful bad guy versus powerless good person. David versus Goliath. Justice versus corruption. But real life doesn't work in binaries like that. Real life is messier, grayer. And the decisions people make in moments like this, they're never as clean as we want them to be. Because she's not doing this purely out of righteousness. Yeah, part of her wants to see him pay for what he's done. Part of her wants to expose the system that's kept people like her voiceless for so long. But there's also a part of her, a part she doesn't talk about, a part she barely admits to herself, that's doing this out of survival. Out of fear. Because she knows that staying silent doesn't guarantee safety anymore. Not after that moment when their eyes met. Not after he started noticing her. So speaking up isn't just the moral choice. It's the strategic one. And that duality, doing the right thing for partially selfish reasons, that's what makes her human. That's what makes this real. Now, around this time, the external pressure I mentioned earlier, it goes from background noise to full-blown crisis. She doesn't know all the details, but she pieces together enough. Federal agents. Warrants. Names in the news that match names she's heard in his phone calls. Whatever web he's been spinning, it's caught the attention of people who can't be bought off or intimidated. And suddenly, the man who seemed untouchable is very, very touchable. And he knows it. She can see it in his face. The way his jaw stays clenched even when he's alone. The way he stares out windows like he's looking for something, or someone. The way he snaps at people on calls, his voice sharp and brittle in a way it never used to be. Control is slipping. And for someone who's built their entire identity on control, that's not just scary. It's existential. But here's what makes this whole thing even more intense. He's starting to look at her more. Not constantly. Not obviously. But enough. A glance when she enters a room. A pause before he takes a call when she's nearby. A question, how long have you worked here? That sounds casual but lands like an interrogation. And she knows what he's doing. He's assessing. He's calculating. He's trying to figure out if she's a liability. She knows something. If she's someone he needs to worry about. And the answer to all those questions is yes. But she can't let him see that. So she plays it cool. Keeps her face neutral. Answers his questions politely, generically. 5 years, sir. Everything's fine, thank you. No, I haven't noticed anything unusual. She gives him exactly what he expects to hear from someone like her. Compliance. Invisibility. Irrelevance. And he wants to believe it. God, he wants to believe it. Because the alternative, that the woman who's been cleaning his house for half a decade has been listening, watching, knowing, that's too much. That's a level of vulnerability he can't afford to acknowledge. So he convinces himself she's harmless. That she's too small, too unimportant, too beneath him to be a threat. And that's his second mistake. Because while he's reassuring himself that she doesn't matter, she's preparing. Not in some dramatic movie plot way. She's not building secret files or recording conversations or doing anything that would get her caught. She's just getting ready. Mentally. Emotionally. Practicing what she'll say when the time comes. Who she'll say it to. How she'll say it in a way that can't be dismissed or twisted or buried. And the time is coming. Fast. Because here's what happens when systems start to collapse. They look for scapegoats. They look for explanations. They look for someone to blame. And the people at the top? They'll sacrifice anyone to save themselves. She's seen it before. In other houses. Other families. Other men who thought they were too powerful to fall until they weren't. And she refuses to be collateral damage in someone else's downfall. So she makes a choice. A calculated, deliberate choice that she knows she can't take back. She reaches out. Not to him. Not directly. But to someone who's been asking questions. Someone official. Someone who's been knocking on doors in the neighborhood, talking to staff, looking for cracks in the story. She doesn't give them everything. Not yet. She just plants a seed. Mentions that she works at the house. That she's been there a while. That if they ever need someone to verify details or timelines or anything else, she's willing to talk. And that's it. That's all it takes. Because the moment she does that, she crosses a line. She stops being a bystander and becomes a participant. She stops being invisible and becomes visible. And there's no going back from that. And the wildest part? He doesn't know yet. He's still operating under the assumption that his biggest threats are external. That the danger is coming from law enforcement, from rivals, from people who exist in his world. He hasn't considered that the danger might be coming from someone who's been standing 3 feet away from him this entire time. But he's about to find out. Because information doesn't stay contained. It spreads. It leaks. And once she's opened that door, once she's let even a sliver of truth out into the world, it's only a matter of time before it reaches him. Before someone mentions her name. Before he realizes that the woman he's been ignoring is the woman who's about to dismantle everything he's built. And when that realization hits, that's when things get truly dangerous. Because a man with nothing to lose is unpredictable. And a man with everything to lose? He's desperate. And desperation makes people do things they wouldn't normally do. Things that cross lines. Things that hurt people. And she knows this. She's thought about it. She's prepared for it as much as anyone can prepare for the possibility that speaking the truth might cost them everything. But here's the thing she's realized, the thing that's kept her moving forward even when every instinct tells her to stop. Silence has a cost too. Maybe not an immediate one. Maybe not a visible one. But it's there. In the way you see yourself. In the way you explain your choices to your kids. In the moments late at night when you're alone with your thoughts and you have to reconcile who you are with who you wanted to be. And she's decided she'd rather face the consequences of speaking than live with the consequences of staying silent. So she's all in now. The wheels are in motion. The information is out there. And whatever happens next is going to test everything she thought she knew about courage, about justice, about whether doing the right thing actually protects you or just makes you a target. And somewhere in that house, in that beautiful, expensive, hollow mansion, he's starting to sense that something's shifted. That the ground beneath him isn't as solid as it used to be. That the people he thought were beneath noticing might be the ones who bring him down. Write this down, truth over safety, if you understand why she made that choice. Because what comes next? It's the moment when everything is resolved. Or explodes. Now here's where it all comes to a head, and I need you to really understand what happens because it's not what anyone expects. Not him. Not her. And definitely not the people watching from the outside. It's a Thursday. Not a Tuesday or Friday, her usual days, but a Thursday. And she gets a call. Not from him. From his assistant. The voice on the other end is tight, clipped. "We need you to come in today. Something came up. Can you be here in an hour?" And she knows. Without being told. Without confirmation. She knows that he knows. Because that's not how these calls usually go. There's no please in the assistant's voice. No explanation. Just an order disguised as a question. And the subtext is screaming, "We need to talk to you. Now." So she goes. Because not going would confirm everything. And at this point, the only card she has left to play is composure. The appearance that she has nothing to hide. That she's still just the cleaning lady. Still harmless. Still invisible. She drives there with her hands steady on the wheel, but her mind is racing through scenarios. Best case. Worst case. Everything in between. She's thought about this moment so many times that it almost feels like muscle memory now. But thinking about it and living it? Those are two completely different things. When she arrives, the house feels different. Quieter. Like even the walls are holding their breath. She lets herself in through the side entrance like always, grabs her supplies from the usual closet, and starts her routine. Because that's what you do when you're trying to appear normal. You commit to the performance. But within minutes he appears. Not in the distant, distracted way he usually does. He walks into the room she's cleaning and just stops. Stands there. Looking at her. And the energy is so heavy she can feel it pressing against her skin. "We need to talk," he says. And his voice is calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before violence. She puts down her spray bottle. Wipes her hands on her apron. Meets his eyes. "Okay." And here's what happens next, and this is the part that changes everything. He doesn't yell. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't do any of the things you'd expect from a man who's just realized someone has betrayed him. Instead, he does something way more chilling. He asks her a question. "How long have you known?" Not "what do you know?" or "who did you talk to?" Just "how long?" Because he's not interested in damage control anymore. It's too late for that. He's interested in understanding. In figuring out how badly he miscalculated. How long the threat was sitting right under his nose. And she could lie. She could play dumb. She could say "known what?" and force him to spell it out. But she's done pretending. So she tells him the truth. Long enough. 2 words. That's all it takes. And the shift in his expression, the way his face hardens, the way his jaw sets, the way something behind his eyes just shuts down, that's when she realizes she's not talking to the man anymore. She's talking to the machine. The calculated, ruthless thing that's kept him alive and powerful for decades. Do you have any idea what you've done? He asks. And it's not rhetorical. He genuinely wants to know if she understands the consequences. Not just for him. For her. And she does. God, she does. She's thought about nothing else for weeks. The risk. The danger. The very real possibility that this conversation ends badly for her. But here's what he doesn't get, what men like him never get. Some things are worth the risk. Yeah, she says. I do. And for a moment, just a flash, she sees something in his face that might be respect. Or maybe just recognition. The acknowledgement that she's not what he thought she was. That she's been playing a different game this whole time. But then it's gone. Replaced by something colder. Harder. You've made a mistake, he says. And the way he says it, flat, factual, like he's informing her of a diagnosis, that's when the fear kicks in. Real fear. The kind that lives in your chest and makes it hard to breathe. But she doesn't run. Doesn't flinch. Because running now would be admitting that she's prey. And she's not prey. Not anymore. Maybe, she says. But it's done. And that's it. That's the line. The moment where the power fully shifts. Because it's done means there's no taking it back. No negotiating. No undoing. The information is out there. The authorities know. And whatever he does to her now won't change that. And he knows it. You can see it in the way his shoulders drop just slightly. The way the tension in his face shifts from anger to something that looks almost like resignation. Because for the first time in his life, he's facing a problem he can't intimidate or buy or manipulate his way out of. And it's coming from the last place he ever thought to look. He stares at her for a long moment. And she stares back. And in that silence, there's an entire conversation happening. About power. About underestimation. About what it means to be seen. Finally he speaks. Get out. Not violently. Not dramatically. Just empty. Defeated. Like he's already moved on to calculating his next move and she's no longer relevant to it. And she leaves. Walks out of that house for the last time. Gets in her car. Drives home. And the whole way her hands are shaking. Not from fear. From adrenaline. From the sheer weight of what just happened. Because she did it. She spoke. She stood her ground. She refused to be invisible when it mattered most. But here's the part that nobody tells you about moments like this. The part that doesn't make it into the movies or the inspirational stories. Doing the right thing doesn't guarantee a happy ending. It doesn't promise safety or justice or vindication. Sometimes it just promises that you'll have to live with the consequences of your choice. Good and bad. Forever. Over the next few weeks, things unfold in ways she can't control. There are investigations. Arrests. Headlines. His face on the news looking smaller and older than she remembers. And yeah, there's a certain satisfaction in watching someone who seemed untouchable finally face accountability. But there's also complexity. Because his downfall doesn't undo the system that created him. It doesn't change the fact that there are 1,000 other men just like him, in 1,000 other houses, having 1,000 other conversations that go unheard. And her? She doesn't become a hero. There's no parade. No medal. No moment where everyone acknowledges what she risked to speak up. In fact, most people never know her name. She's just a source in the reports. A witness in the legal documents. Still invisible even in the story of her own courage. But here's what does change. She changes. The way she sees herself. The way she moves through the world. Because once you stop accepting invisibility as your default state, once you prove to yourself that your voice matters even when everyone's told you it doesn't, you can't go back to being small. You can't unsee your own power. And maybe that's the real revelation here. Not that she brought down a powerful man. But that she discovered she was never as powerless as she thought. That invisibility was only ever a costume. One she could take off whenever she decided the cost of wearing it was higher than the cost of being seen. Now, does she find another job easily? No. Does she face retaliation in subtle, insidious ways? Yeah. Do people in certain circles know her name now and not in a good way? Absolutely. But does she regret it? That's the question she asks herself late at night when the adrenaline's worn off and she's alone with her thoughts. And the answer honestly is complicated. Because regret isn't binary. You can regret the cost of something while still believing it was necessary. You can wish things were different while knowing you'd make the same choice again. And that's where she lands. In that gray space between triumph and loss. Between empowerment and consequence. Between the version of her life where she stayed silent and stayed safe, and the version where she spoke up and survived. And survival, in the end, is its own kind of victory. Comment below. She made the right call, if you believe she made the right choice even knowing the price. Because there's more to this story that we still need to understand. Look, if you've made it this far, you already understand that this channel isn't about clickbait or empty entertainment. It's about real stories, difficult decisions, and those truths we prefer to ignore but need to be said. And if that makes sense to you, if you want to keep seeing content like this, stories that move you, that make you think, that show the human side behind power and invisibility, subscribe to the channel. Seriously. Because the more people hear, the more stories I can bring to you. And if this story touched you, if you felt the tension, the complexity, the weight of the choices this woman had to make, leave a like. That shows me I'm on the right track, that this type of narrative matters to you as much as it matters to me. And write in the comments, invisible but not silent, just so I know you made it to the end and that this message resonated in some way. I want to see who was really here with me from the beginning to the end of this journey. Now, there's a video over here that explores another angle on this same topic. What happens when ordinary people confront systems designed to crush them? Click and continue the conversation with me there because it doesn't end here.